Hello and welcome to the Tailoring Talk YouTube channel. In this video I'd like to talk about the PS Portal. 2 years since launch, is this device still worth buying, and is it relevant in a market drenched in handheld devices? Okay, so let's look at the timeline for the PS Portal and how I felt about it. So it was released on November the 15th, 2023 in the UK and in the US and in some key territories. And it was sold at a cost of £199 or $199. At this point it was remote play only and required a PS5 to use it. It has an 8-inch LCD display and is aiming for a 1080p 60 frames per second streaming target. So Sony recommended a minimum of 5 megabits or up to 50 megabits broadband connection to get a good clear stream. And in most cases that works. Initially, much like a lot of people, I was skeptical about the device. I had used remote play from my PS5 via my Mac and my iPad and had various good and bad experiences. Weirdly, I found that third-party remote play apps on my Apple devices work better than the official Sony remote play app. But generally I only used it for single player games, as the input lag for twitchier games wasn't really good enough for me. Another reason for not buying the Portal was the lack of Bluetooth connectivity for my headphones. You could only use Sony specific headphones via the proprietary PlayStation Link audio connection. Or you could use wired headphones. So I held off from buying the device. That kind of put me off. Despite these reservations, however, which I'm sure a lot of other people had, the PS Portal immediately sold out. So, moving to early 2024, Sony rolled out some firmware improvements that improved connection stability and how it handled various in-home Wi-Fi setups. I was intrigued at this stage, but I wasn't quite sold. At this point, I upgraded my home broadband to a better connection and better speed, and this started me thinking about how these better streaming speeds might make the experience of remote play more bearable. I had heard anecdotally from friends who owned the Portals what a massive difference remote streaming was on the device, so I then took the plunge in July of 2024. Soon after this, the Portal was updated again by Sony, and this is allowing it to handle the captive Portal login pages like you get in hotels and cafes and trains, as well as phone-assisted authentication. So this again helped people sitting on the fence who thought the Portal was a home-only Wi-Fi device. In fact, I have used it since, tethered to my iPhone and also on cafe Wi-Fi. But you do have to find a good Wi-Fi speed. It's just quite rare in most public places where I live. And I do find that 5G in my neck of the woods isn't really 5G. It's not as quick as you think. Also, it's probably being used by so many people, the bandwidth is very poor. So that kind of affected the quality of streaming. Remember still, this required me remotely connecting to my PlayStation 5 console. Nevertheless, at home I was blown away with how good the Portal was at streaming games from my PS5. I finally had a backup to play my games when I couldn't get to my TV, if the rest of the family were using it perhaps. So I still mainly used it for playing single player games. And with the PS5 it still wasn't perfect for faster games like third person shooters like Call of Duty, but it was really good for single player games. At this point the Portal was pretty much left alone in terms of updates, but was quite a useful device, and it was quite popular amongst PlayStation players. In November 2024, Sony did release quite a nice looking grey variant of the Portal as part of their 30th anniversary celebrations, while otherwise nothing much changed. Mid-November I did buy a PS5 Pro with the Link headset, which means I can now use my Portal with a wireless headset. But I certainly wasn't going to wear this outside the comfort of my home. The headset looks ridiculous, even if it does sound really good. Then, in June 2025, the Switch 2 was released. I bought a Switch 2 and it did kind of throw a cat among the pigeons for me. It can handle a lot of more demanding games without the needed strong internet connection, and has a really solid library of games and 4K upgrades of games I already own on the Switch, from the original Switch. And it did highlight how much better it was for gaming outside the house, where I couldn't always rely on a decent connection. My Portal was mostly unused at this stage, apart from the odd time I needed it to do some remote maintenance of my PS5 Pro. I still actually use it more than my PlayStation VR2 headset. However, November 25 came along, 2025, and it changed everything again. So Sony had been beta testing this for a few months with select games, but they finally enabled cloud streaming of PS5 games. This was a game changer, as essentially you didn't need a PS5 anymore to play PS5 games, but it did come with some caveats. Knowing which games actually stream on the portal can be quite confusing, and to be able to stream any existing games from your game library, you had to check Sony's compatibility list, as not all were available. Most first-party PS5 games are playable, as are all the games from Sony's PS Plus Classic game selection. PS4 and PS3 games that aren't on either of those lists just won't work, as are some more recent third-party games. However, since the update to the portal, any games released after the streaming update do seem to work. And if all else fails, you can still stream from your PS5, which is nice to have that option. Another thing you do need to be aware of is that to be able to stream games directly to the portal, you need to be on the highest tier of PS Plus, which is PS Premium, at a cost of £120 a year. So yeah, that's still £10 a month, but Sony doesn't allow you to subscribe that way. You have to pay the whole lot up front, which is strange, as you can rent a PS5 for £10 a month. And if you're a child, nope. Child accounts don't support cloud streaming either. This might change, but I guess this is similar to why you can't share games on multiple PlayStation devices anymore too, which I do think means they are limiting sales on certain games, but they're still not allowing this for children. So get past all these challenges. Now the PS Portal is a solid, lightweight handheld that can play a large amount of games with no installation times, and is also a really good form factor. I love that Sony took a DualSense controller with all the haptics and adaptive triggers, split it in half, whacked a screen in between, in fact a touch screen, so you can still use all the features that would normally be available on the DualSense touchpad too. I have a lot of handheld gaming devices, and this is definitely the most comfortable one to use by far for extended gaming. So if you've not yet got a Portal and are still thinking of buying, what can it do and how usable is it now? If you have decided you're happy to pay the upfront cost of the device, you can get it less than £200 on some sites now, and also happy to be a premium subscriber, what else about the Portal do you need to know? So the PlayStation Link audio might be a deal breaker, but the Portal still has a 3.5mm wired headphone jack. I still use a pair of iPhone headphones with the wired ones, pre-Lightning, with the 3.5mm jack. And with this, when I do take it away with me from home, I do use that. In fact, I bought these headphones quite recently. They're still available on the Apple Store, so that I could use it with my other handhelds, like the Playdate and the Trim UI. The Wi-Fi the Portal uses is Wi-Fi 5, not Wi-Fi 6, which, since you can now get Wi-Fi 7 routers, this also seems a bit of a misstep, especially in terms of how their device is a streaming device. And I guess this was one aspect that could keep the cost down and give it a price of £200. The battery capacity hasn't been officially published by Sony. Teardowns have looked inside the device, and they give it a capacity of roughly 4,300 milliamp hours. Again, compared to other devices like the ANN Odin 3 with its 8,000 milliamp battery, this does make Sony's device a bit less capable for extended gameplay. Again, I guess this is again because Sony wanted a balance between potential game time play and weight. The Portal is a relatively light device, and also as it is streaming and not actually processing any graphics, that means the power requirements are lower. So if you have the screen on its maximum brightness and use all the haptics and the volume turned up, you get somewhere between 3 to 4 hours of gameplay. You can connect a power bank to its USB charging point, and thank God there are no proprietary cables this time round, and this keeps it going. Turn off all the haptics, reduce the screen brightness to about 50%, and you get roughly 7 to 9 hours of game time. Personally, I've never had any time in my day longer than a couple of hours to play games, so this is fine for me. So, would you buy? After the initial cost, the premium subscription, the headphone limitations, the Wi-Fi challenges away from home, the limited battery capacity, and the fact the screen isn't actually OLED, although it's still pretty good, does this fit into your lifestyle? Despite all this, I love my PS Portal. With my age and restrictions with other members of the house using devices and the TV, the PS Portal has genuinely allowed me to play a bigger variety of games than I would normally have been able to. Direct streaming to the device is a genius update, and as games get more polished and more capable, I don't have to worry about the Portal not being able to play them. Do bear in mind that Sony streams the games to you from a PS5, not a PS5 Pro, so you might miss out on some of the high-end features of the PS5 Pro ready games, but on a screen this size it's not really an issue. So what next? At the time of recording, right now, we are currently suffering from Ramageddon, with the prices of RAM skyrocketing due to the need for AI companies to upgrade their data centers. In a recent Bloomberg report, they state that Sony is considering pushing back the PS6 launch date due to 2028 or even 2029. This could also raise the price of the Switch too. Now, Sony did stockpile a whole bunch of RAM when they were manufacturing the PS5, so we might see some stability for the current PlayStation 5 consoles. But this could definitely affect the future of the industry, and at the moment, this is pure speculation, as Sony hasn't made a final decision on pushback, but it's worth keeping an eye out. So what if Sony's next handheld is handheld only? One that can play installed standalone games and also stream games? Would this be a good device to sell in the meantime? Rumours suggest some sort of custom AMD silicon with 24 gigs of RAM. If the device could play offline games but also stream games like the PS Portal does, and possibly also dock to a TV, I'd be very happy to upgrade. What are your thoughts on this? Will Sony release a PS6 soon, or do we even need 8K games? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. As always, if you do like these videos, show your support by clicking the like button and subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.